The Annual Status of Education Report, or ASER, has been released. The household survey was conducted across 616 rural districts and covered 6.9 lakh children in the age group of 3 to 16 years to record their schooling status and assess their basic reading and arithmetic skills. The report has a lot to say about the learning abilities of elementary school children in rural India. To talk more about it, I have an esteemed panel of guests. First up, we have Dr. D. Ravi Kumar, Member of Parliament, VCK, Mr. Sriram Naganathan, a consultant at IGNIS, and Mr. S.V. Manjunath, Associate Director at Azim Premji University. Thank you to each one of you. Thanks for joining the show. My first question is, the survey has taken after 4 years, of which 3 are pandemic years. What's your reading of the status of education from 2018? Mr. Ravi Kumar, if we could start with you.
The Tamil Nadu government's performance, particularly the DMK government performance in the last 1 year, is very appreciable because they have taken many initiatives to encourage students to enroll in government schools. But at the same time, many issues are there to address, particularly the level of understanding for English and mathematics. It's very pathetic, and I personally visit many schools, because I take education and health are the 2 major issues of concern in my constituency, and I visit not only government schools and also the private schools, and I personally know the level of understanding and the skill of particularly mathematical skill are very low. Yes, it is because of the COVID. Now the students are struggling to cope up with lessons, and it's true. But generally, the GER is very high in Tamil Nadu, both for school education, also for higher education. The GER is almost double national average, but the level of understanding and knowledge, particularly the mathematics skill, is very low. These are the things how to address. I have written these things. I have raised these things in the letter written to Education Minister.
Sriram, how do you look at the report? What do you have to say about the overall report? What is your reading of the status of education?
Well, we have been seeing these ASER reports for more than a decade now, and in effect, they are just showing us a mirror of what the education looks like in the country, and it is not very different over the years. It's little different. The percentages move up a little bit and little down. So, in terms of this particular report, yes, there are some surprising positives. For example, you have 98.4% in the age group of 6 to 14 going to school, and you have a good number of girls. Percentage of girls who have not enrolled in school has been declining, and it continues to decline even in the COVID and post-COVID scenarios. In 2022, it is apparently 7.9. So that in some sense indicates that parents are only too willing to send. The focus of every parent in India, I must say, very generally, there might be exceptions, is to educate the children. That is a positive change over all the decades that we have crossed since independence. So you talk to rural parent, you talk to urban parent, the focus is on education. Now, what we do with that aspiration is a different thing, but the aspiration levels are very high. Nobody thinks that anything is beyond them. So people want to send their children to school. Nobody wants to pull their children out. Very few want to pull the children out. So all kinds of positives are there. The negatives, again, the reading levels, class 5 children are unable to read the class 2 textbooks and class 5 children are unable to solve problems. Now, these have been there. Now, in some sense, ASER report itself is just a weighing scale of ability. So you can't put a malnourished child on a weighing scale and every year after year and say that this child is malnourished. Yeah, we know that. Now, what are we going to do about it? That is the question. So what will we do by the time the ASER report comes next year, or the NAS, the National Achievement Survey, comes in the next edition of National Achievement Survey comes? What is the outcome that we expect to see? What is the improvement that we expect to see? All right, we accept the broad notion that you need to measure something in order to improve it. That is the notion on which ASER and all the assessment tests stand. But are we improving? Now, that is not being measured. I mean, there is no cohesive measurement of how it is sought to be improved and what has happened and what is the kind of what are the pitfalls and what have we achieved and why we have not achieved what we sought to be achieved. So all that is not being discussed, but the predominant kind of focus on ASER as a mirror which shows the status of education in the country is a little sort of, for me, it is a bit of a problem, because what is the point of focusing on the mirror? It is showing you that you are malnourished. There are issues. Now, are we doing something about it? And therefore, next time the mirror is shown to you, are we going to improve? Are we expecting to improve at all? That is not, there is no, several programs are being run by state governments. There is a Illam Tedi Kalvi in Tamil Nadu. There is a Padho Punjab and Padhao Punjab in Punjab. There is something, I am right now working with a government education program in the Northeast, where there is a learning recovery process for the next 3 years. All kinds of things are happening across states. Now, can we expect to see improvement in the next survey? The big question. Can there be a cohesive across the country national policy of learning outcomes to be achieved, which are age appropriate? And if we don't achieve that, can we identify the problems, challenges, and move, and work on them? That is a big issue.
So there are several other questions that I want to ask you with regard to the report, but I'll quickly move to Mr. S.V. Manjunath and find out. So, how do you look at this report, sir?
Thanks, Shreyas. And like my previous two speakers, panelists mentioned, I think, and I fully agree with what Mr. Sriram was saying. I think this report, looking at it every year, I'm saying there are no significant changes that is coming out. Yeah. So the way I would look at it is that overall, the heartening thing is even after COVID, the enrollment levels have not dropped. That is one thing that we need to, even though it had immediately taken a beating, during the COVID and immediate months after the COVID, it is significantly not dropped. I think that is one positive that I would see from the report. Correct. But otherwise, the broad indicators that are there has been there for some time, right? So I would say, I think the concern is, if you look at Karnataka, if I look at Karnataka, what is the major concern? Concern is that there is significant, moving away of children from government schools to private schools. There's a big trend. If you look at the current data, we work in about 11, 12 districts. And overall, and it's not comparable. A city like Bangalore, 82% of the children are in private schools, and about only 15, 16%, 17% are in government. And that should be similar to in many other major cities. Even if you look at a district like Kalburgi and Bidar, 45% of the children are in private schools. Mm-hmm. And why I'm raising this issue is not all private schools are providing quality education. Learning is not happening, but there is a perception among parents that, if I go to private school, my child will get educated, child will learn English, and it will have a better future. It is only a perception. I am deliberately using the word perception, but it's not real. It is not borne out on the ground. So I think we have to move beyond, improvement in enrollment and go into quality of education. So what do we mean by that? especially after COVID, last 2 years. Last year was the first year, as Mr. Sriram was saying, many states, including Karnataka, have focused on recovery of learning loss. I think that should be sustained. If children who have lost out, not coming to school, going through all kinds of online learning, which has not worked, so there has been a severe learning loss, and added to that is already, children have not been able to learn. A fifth standard, a second child, a fifth standard child is not able to read second standard text, etc., are well known. And accentuated to the problem was the learning loss. So we have to focus on recovery of learning loss, number one. Number two, we have to focus on certain major things, right? There is a tendency of government schools also starting English medium education. But do we have competent teachers who are able to teach English better? When we are not able to teach English as a language very well, if you start teaching all subjects in English, how does it work? It doesn't work, right? So we have to build teachers' capability to be able to do that, right? So it's good thing that some of the enrollment is retained in government schools because there is an English medium education, but the quality of teaching has to be addressed, and the shortage of teachers have to be addressed, right? And there's a big focus in NEP on foundational arithmetic and language. I think that is the focus. I think both Dr. Ravi Kumar as well as Sriram have pointed out that basic arithmetic, foundational learning of mathematics and language is very critical for learning subsequent subjects at higher levels. So, and we will also have to focus on dropout of children at class 5, class 8, and class 10. There is dropout of children, particularly in rural areas, girls, minorities, and disadvantaged children dropping out. I think that has to be addressed. And also, how do we accommodate, this issue of English medium versus mother tongue education versus, whatever children are comfortable with. At the foundational level, these have to be integrated. NEP talks about it. How do we make it happen? So these are the issues I feel, apart from the basic infrastructural issues and things like that. Although most governments are trying to address, but the problems are so huge that I think it will take several years. So we will have to have a 5-year plan and drop down to 1 year, and then we'll have to address these issues in a systematic way, in a focused way. And that's how I would look at it. I will not look at ASER report as a standalone report. It has to be integrated and seen along with all these other issues.
But if you've noted, and I'm sure if you've gone through the report carefully, it clearly indicates that advanced states like Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh, things have actually dipped. And in, let's say in traditionally backward states like Bihar and Jharkhand, things are improving. So don't you see that as a progress that, that's actually happening?
Certainly. There are some positives from it. I think we should take that. I think there is wherever there is focus on education by the concerned departments, and there is a sustained effort towards reaching the educational goals, you can see an improvement. It's heartening to see Bihar and Jharkhand and some of the northeastern states catching up. But at the same time, I think in the panel here we are representing Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. There's a lot to do even in these states. These are middle states, I would call, but I think there's a lot more focus needs to come in.
So my next question is for all the three of you. There seems to be a paradox here. Now, the pandemic seems to have hit the learning outcomes across the board, but enrollments are up. What could be the reason behind this? Why, how is it that we see an increase in the number of enrollments across the country? Mr. Sriram?
Yeah, see, there could be many reasons. In fact, I'm also surprised that the enrollments are up because what we heard from some states, enrollments were down initially, at least post-pandemic. Immediately after the pandemic, lockouts got sort of over. Particularly the girl students' enrollment was less, and it's very heartening to see that the girl students' enrollment has not declined. There could be many reasons. For example, I don't know, but one micro reason, for example, this is purely for instance, I'm not generalizing it. In many rural schools as well as in urban private schools, both parents go to work. Now, they need some place, given that we are all in a nuclear family system, they need some place where they can keep the child. Now, had there been options, they would probably choose not to send the child to school or consider even non-enrollment. I don't know. But school is the only place where both parents, say being wage laborers, find it safe to keep the children through the day. So enrollment by itself doesn't mean much, in the sense that the school is actually a daycare center for a number of people. And so now the insist or the imperativeness of the both the parents working has gone up. It is a rural woman's desire to become a housewife. It is not the urban scenario where a housewife actually is considered to be a little lower than a working woman. For a rural woman, there is no option but to be a construction worker or a worker in the fields. Her desire is actually to be a household person, taking care of children, etc. So the aspirations differ, and since they both have to work and both have to leave home early, they just go and deposit the children in the school. Secondly, enrollment in, say, for example, midday meal scheme. If you look at midday meal scheme enrollment, it seems to have stabilized, gone up, etc. But if you actually look at how many children are taking meals, you would find the number much lower, because in states like Tamil Nadu, unless you register for midday meals, you would not get the other freebies like your free uniform or shoes and etc. So you register for midday meals, but there is a caste equation comes in. So if there is a rumor, or if it gets to be known that the person cooking the midday meals is from an unacceptable caste, so to say, or a lower caste, or Dalit, or a different religion person, then parents actually don't want their children to. Quite a few parents don't want the children to take the meal. They send snacks, they send all kinds of things, and give all kinds of pretexts why the child is not having midday meals. We have to convince them that midday meals is fine. We are taking midday meals. Why don't you? This is much more nutritious than what you can cook at home. But if you look at purely the enrollment for midday meals, you would find it very high. If you find the number of people who are taking the food actually in every school, you would find the number significantly less. So there are disparities in this enrollment. Enrollment, how it is defined, I don't know. If you just go by the register, it may give you a different number. If you actually go by the reality of how many are in the classroom, or how many are taking midday meals, etc., you might get a different number.
Sure. Dr. Ravi Kumar, I know it's a busy day for you. Your closing comments. What do you have to say about the whole ASER report in final words?
Yeah, the ASER reports, it shows the school education scene in the whole country. The union government has introduced national new education policy, but the new education policy does not help the state governments to improve the condition of school education. So it needs special initiatives like Tamil Nadu government, which is taking many new initiatives to gap. Earlier, a friend has told correctly. They have introduced many schemes, like schemes to bridge the gap created by COVID pandemic. So it needs a special initiative, but it also needs the big money. So because the union government in the budget, they are reducing the budget allocation for education, particularly school education, year by year. But they have promised 6% of GDP for education in the new education policy, but they are reducing every year the budget allocation for education. The school, even the state governments also not allocating sufficient fund for the school education. Many states, we see they are allocating a very meager amount. But comparatively, the Tamil Nadu government's allocation is better. But it needs because in many government schools, the infrastructure is very poor, and it still needs big helping hand. They have introduced now a private government initiative, the donation scheme, to address the infrastructure problem in government schools. But I don't know how it is going to help, because how the government is going to rope in the industrial houses in this scheme. We have to wait and see. So two-pronged approach is very important. One, the allocation of fund for education, and also taking new initiatives to addressing the gaps. So the Tamil Nadu government is traveling in the right direction, but it needs a long way to go.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Sriram and Mr. Manjunath, one last question. ASER conducts its education surveys from households and not schools. So how do you think, how effective is this method? How do you look at the way how it's done?
Well, can I go first?
Sure, go ahead, sir.
There is a big issue there, because conducting a survey of children is extraordinarily difficult. Now, what you put in words in the questionnaire might be interpreted in very different way by the child. So it is not at all easy, even in school. School is a better place to conduct a survey, because there is a learning atmosphere, there are teachers in school, the child knows that this is something to do with learning. This whole atmosphere is something to do with learning. So questions are taken in a very nice way. Conducting a survey in a household, that too by people who are not familiar with education or child education of this level, is a very tricky area. So I would not, I mean, I would assume that ASER has done its job in designing the survey really well. But I have seen issues. For example, I'll just give you a small example. I went to a rural school in Tamil Nadu, and the question was, if you put a cell phone and a ball on a slide, which will roll down and which will slide, was the question to a girl. So the girl said that the ball will roll, but I am not sure about the cell phone. So I asked why. The girl said that, look, if the surface of the slide is very hard, if it is rough, the phone would stand there, would not slide. Now, that is, the girl has understood the concept of fiction, but the questionnaire wants me to mark her answer as wrong. Because for the questionnaire, the phone should slide down. The girl is already thinking of friction. See, it is very, very tricky, very, very difficult to understand what the child thinks of your question and how the child is. So possibly a one-to-one kind of a interaction, rather than just distributing questionnaire and asking everybody to hand it over back, is a better method. That might take time. But I do not know how ASER has defined this survey, or what all ASER has done to make the survey as reflective as possible of the real education. So all I can say is that it is very difficult. At home, it is extraordinarily difficult. I would look at a survey which is done in schools in a very conducive, nice atmosphere, with people who know the children and people who can interact with the children for a longer period, to be more reflective of the education levels.
Sure. Mr. Manjunath, I just want to ask you the same question, but I have a follow-up question with that as well. So how do we, how do we look at this survey? Because one, how effective is this method? The other thing that we also learned from this survey is that even though there have been attempts to regulate or restrict private tuitions, the numbers are increasing. So that also tells us, like Mr. Sriram was saying, that the teachers are, the survey report, while the ball rolls and the mobile doesn't slide due to friction, while that is a right way to look at it. The other part is private tuitions are also increasing. That could be one of the reasons why students are trying to understand things better. So how do you look at these two things?
Yeah. So I'll just add a couple of more points to the previous issue of looking at the survey. See, one is I think it gives a very broad pattern. But then if you want to find educational solutions to the issues raised, the survey has to be a little more nuanced. The element that I would add is I think assessment or talking to the teachers and finding out, because they are the central teachers are central to improvement of quality of education. So I would say assessing the teachers and knowing their children and also doing it in a non-threatening way. See, usually what happens at school level, if you do any survey, teachers will take it as an affront. Any results coming out of any survey, they will feel that it is an assessment of their performance, and the system will not take it. So you cannot do this kind of a survey and hold it as a mirror, or as a mirror for teachers' performance. So how do you do it? A much more nuanced way. Which subjects? What are they teaching, and what are the constraints they are facing? How do you address it? And you have to go district by district. There are contextually there are different situations. The survey has to take into account teachers' perspective and the issues and challenges they are facing and what kind of support it is needed. I would also combine it with the surveys that the state itself is conducting. Student achievement survey, every state is conducting. NCRT conducts survey. So combine everything and look at it in a holistic way. That is the first response. On the private tuition, I would say, I will bluntly say that the government will not be able to regulate that because it has so many issues to look at. I would rather say you focus on improving the quality of education in the schools. See, this tuition has been there and it will continue to be there. So, but the real issue is, why are people going to private tuition rather than not having confidence in the school education? Again, you are coming back to basics, saying that maybe they don't have confidence on the quality of teaching in the schools. So address this issue first. And I'm not certain that any government will be able to address that kind of an issue because they cannot regulate. You can just make a guideline or rule or gazette notification, but they will not be able to control that. I would go for improving the quality of teachers, quality of teaching, and how whatever policies are there, how well you will implement the current curriculum and reach out to all children without excluding anybody. I would say focus on that.
All right. Thank you to all the three of you. We've come to the end of this discussion, and I hope each one of us takes some learning from this and hope things improve in our education system in the days to come. Thank you, everyone.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.